This is the Montana Outdoor Podcast, brought to you in part by Rocky Mountain Truck and Trailer in Missoula, home of Boss Snowplows, CM Truck Beds, and Diamond Sea Trailers. Just go to rmtte.com for more information. And by Superior Hardwoods of Montana, home of the largest selection of in-stock high-end wood products and flooring in the western United States. Let them guide you through the woods at superior-hardwoods.com. Now, get ready for more fascinating topics and the most interesting people you will ever find in Montana's great outdoors. We offer new podcasts most every Saturday. You can get a link to these podcasts by going to our website, montanooutdoor.com, or by going to our Facebook page, or just send an email to Downrigger at montanooutdoor.com and say send a link to my email. It's that simple. Now let's head out with your host, Downrigger Dale, and see what's going on in Montana's great outdoors.
Thank you very much, Manny. And as Manny just said, I am Downrigger Dale with the Montana Outdoor Podcast. So great to have all of you here. Really appreciate you joining us every week as we try to bring the great outdoors right to your living room or your car or wherever you like to listen. Hey, speaking of listening, if you pick up our podcast from Spotify or Apple Podcasts or wherever, even our website, montanooutdoor.com, make sure you share it with your family and friends. We always want our audience to keep on growing. It helps us a great deal. Now, a few other things to remember. Also, look for those links in our podcast description. It's usually right below the description that you might have read just before you hit the listen button or the play button. Those come in real handy to give you a little more information about what's going on. So be sure and do that whenever you can. Another thing we want you to do is join us every Saturday morning live for our live radio show called the Montana Outdoor Radio Show. We'd love to have you along. You can catch that on 30 great radio stations all across the great state of Montana, or you can catch it on our website, montanooutdoor.com, or on Facebook Live right there on our Facebook page. So be sure and grab that as well. Another thing I want to do is welcome all of our active military all around the world. You know, I just can't thank you folks enough for what you do out there protecting our nation and a lot of other nations too. But when you get a little time off, it's such an honor that you decide to spend a little time with us listening to this podcast. And I hope this brings you a little bit of home. Again, we thank you so much for your service. And let us know anytime you want us to give a shout out to anybody here stateside. We're always happy to do it. Now, last year, you may recall, we were all wondering, now, what's the weather going to do? Are we going to keep having this dry weather, all that? So I got a hold of Matt Rosencrans at the National Weather Service the Climate Prediction Center. That's the National Weather Service Climate Prediction Center. And he did a great job explaining what our weather was going to be like. And lo and behold, his prediction was spot on, and he was about a year out. And if you remember, part of that, he said, for next winter, it just might go from El Nino to La Nina. And so, sure enough, that looks like what it's doing because we're starting to get more moisture. I've looked at website, for example, on the Big Sky Ski Resort. They said they're having about the best year for this time of year, mind you, since the last 10 years. I also looked at Big Mountain up in the Whitefish area, northwest Montana. And they said kind of the same thing, that they're getting more moisture than they have, especially last year, but for quite a while. So good sign there. So I wanted to bring Matt back on and have him talk a bit about what the rest of this winter is going to look like, since winter hasn't quite got started yet. I want to see what he thinks about what it's going to look like, and then we'll see if we can press him a little and get him to, maybe share what he thinks the summer's going to be like and that. So we'll find all that out, but first I want to welcome him in from the National Weather Service Climate Prediction Center, Matt Rosencrans. Matt, thanks for being here again. Love having you on.
Yeah, good to be here, talking about the outdoors.
Yeah. Well, and, sounds like you guys are doing good. You did pretty good here.
Hope to get the best forecast out the door every year.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm going to tell you what, you did a great job. Now, if I remember right, you were telling me that with the technology and all that you guys have there in the Climate Prediction Center, your ability to get it right has gone up quite a bit, hasn't it? I can't remember what you'd said last year. Was it like about 50% of the time or something like that?
Yeah. So when you look at our long-term temperature scores, in our scoring metric, they are between 30 and 40,
Mm-hmm.
which 25 means you got half the forecast, half of all the points in the U.S. Correct.
Mm-hmm.
So we're up at about 60 to 70% of all the forecast points across the U.S. On any
Wow.
given forecast. So yeah, it's kudos to the scientists here and our smart university partners that help us figure out the parts that we can't figure out, and then we put it all together and build an outlook out. That the whole team here does a great job.
Yeah, I'm telling you what, it was pretty impressive, and it's been a little frustrating, especially last year, which you predicted we were not going to get a lot of moisture, and we didn't, and so it was a little frustrating for us. We did get through the summer sort of okay, but we had some pretty rough forest fires in a few spots, and that's just no snowpack, not a lot of water. That's what happens, but. One thing that you had brought up to us was that the weather patterns were probably going to change. And so I'm going to get into that a little bit. But first, just for folks that maybe have not been listening from the last time you were on, and we have grown so much. It blows me away. Tell us a bit about yourself and about the National Weather Service Climate Prediction Center and what you guys do there, just so folks get caught up here.
Yeah, so the Climate Prediction Center, we do forecasts from looking at today, looking at 2 weeks from today, 3 weeks, a month, looking at next 3 months, and we do that forecast all the way out for the next year. For temperature, precipitation, that's all the way out to a year. The shorter term, like 2 week forecasts, we do actually forecast for heavy snow, high winds, right? Those real conditions that when you're in the outdoors, right? A windy, really snowy day it makes it a lot more difficult.
Yes.
But we've got people here that have worked on, the tools and the math behind how to make a forecast of high wind events 2 weeks out into the future. And we're always trying to push those boundaries, and can we make that forecast 3 weeks, a month, 2 months out into the future? And so those are the kinds of things we do. We also do a lot of water supply, drought forecasting, information that goes to the river forecast centers so they can forecast floods and how much water is behind dams and things like that. So collaborative work with them a lot. So and a lot of work even with the the USDA or the state Department of Natural Resources, and a lot of kind of local outreach groups and county emergency managers, just getting them the information they need. Whether it's the Climate Prediction Center, we're all like 2 weeks out to like 2 years, and then we do also have partners, the Weather Prediction Center and the local forecast office that are doing 2 hours out to this first week as well. So it's all kind of one big agency. Different offices within it, but one big agency to get you all the information from tomorrow out to 1 year or 2 years, really.
Well, and it's obviously for folks like us out here in Montana who our number one thing, in fact, it's the biggest segment of our economy, is the outdoors. I mean, that's why people come visit Montana. That's why, from our ranching and farming to hunting and fishing to everything else, the weather plays such a huge role. So when we hear these forecasts, on different radio stations or different weather channels and all that, are they pretty much getting most of their information from some form of the National Weather Service then?
A large portion of them are getting their information from us. And then there's even the background information, just like what was the temperature and humidity an hour ago? What were the winds an hour ago at these different airports or different places around? The Weather Service accumulates that data and then makes that data public. And then some private companies do their own forecast based off of that. Some companies will take it and take the Weather Service forecast and just plug it into what they're doing. And the satellites that are launched in space, right? Those are largely the government satellites, so they kind of provide all that background data. And then what they do with it after that, that kind of depends on each, outlet, what TV station or radio or whatever app it is. So they all have different methods for doing it, but a large part of it is based on the data that we have.
Now, what's your background, Matt? How did you get involved in this?
I watched the remnants of a hurricane roll through my hometown as a kid and thought, man, that's some really strong winds. I want to know about that. And then, you find out, oh, this is kind of important in the world, and you can go to school for it. And then went in the military because they, planes don't like to fly in really adverse weather. So amongst the other things that the military gets involved with. So thank you for thanking the veterans and those in the military today. We appreciate it. And then after, doing my time in the military, I got out and went to work for the National Weather Service to do, mainly hurricane forecasts, but I've also got into doing the temperature, precipitation, drought forecasting, kind of any of the big extreme events. That's the real scientific question I wanted to tackle.
Well, thank you for your service and both in the military and what you're doing now, because it's important to all of us. So when you were on last time, your predictions, as I was saying, were pretty much spot on. For example, when I was looking at the Big Sky Ski Resort here just lately, I look at their web page and it shows their snowfall report and all that. They're based near Bozeman, Montana, and they had said on their web page that this is the most early snow that they've got in about the last 10 years. So very encouraging. Moving up into northwest Montana, Whitefish Mountain Ski Resort said pretty much the same thing. So far, so good there. Now, you had mentioned when you were here last time that we were in the El Nino weather pattern, if that's the correct terminology. And but you had mentioned that we would probably be moving out of that and into the La Nina weather pattern by this year. So first, can you tell us what those things are? And then second, can you tell us if we've indeed moved out of El Nino and into La Nina?
Yeah, so El Nino and La Nina, besides being fun to say, are changes in the sea surface temperatures and the wind patterns, but way out over the Pacific, out south of Hawaii and over towards the Philippines, so way out there. But it changes so much of the surface of the Pacific Ocean that it changes the winds above them, and that changes the jet stream, and that changes where storms and how frequently kind of storm systems come into the western part of the U.S. or Alaska, and then a lot of those storm systems will, if that kind of jet stream is pointed at the Pacific Northwest, those storms will come in across Washington and Idaho and get into Montana. So that can be responsible for a lot of the changes there. El Nino is when the waters near Hawaii are warmer, and La Nina is when they're kind of colder. Well, the equatorial waters in that region. So they kind of represent kind of opposites there.
Okay.
And we were in an El Nino last year, into the spring, and in the summer, we fully made that transition out towards the late summer. And our forecast to go into La Nina for this winter. Right now, there's most of the forecast models have us going into that way. Some of our forecast models and our tools don't have us going full bore into La Nina. So there's a 57% chance for being in La Nina. And the background for making these forecasts, right? We run hundreds of models, simulations of the planet, and 57% of them, and our other statistical tools and such. So looking at past years. Understanding those models, what data went into them, what are each one of their strong suits and weak suits, because every model is good and some of them are useful. So you got to understand that. And that's where the meteorologists make that kind of determination, right? We'll talk with all the people that run those models. The group we get together, there's about 15 of us get together and make the forecast here at CPC amongst the different groups. So we, see which ones really are more likely to happen, and that's how we come to that 57% chance of being in the next couple of 3 months.
And the La Nina usually means more moisture, correct?
It does. It usually means more moisture for kind of Washington or interior Washington, Spokane over to Idaho and into the northern Rockies.
Mm-hmm.
Can typically mean and a fair bit more moisture than El Nino years, which means normally means wet into kind of Southern California and Nevada and dry up in Europe and the Montana parts of the world.
So when I'm hearing that we're seeing ski resorts starting to get more of that snow than they have seen in the past, say, 10 years, would that kind of give us the indication that maybe that's what's causing that, is we're starting to phase over to La Nina, or is it kind of just coincidence at this point?
There's a little bit of that is coincidence for the first storm systems of the year that kind of come in. Because right now we're going to be back in a bit of a dry period, a bit of a dry and warm for the next couple of weeks. But then you are more likely to see more of those storms come throughout the winter. As we get into December, January, February, the rest of December, and even January, February, March, you really see those strongest impacts the latter half of January and in through February. And we've got about an extra inch of precipitation forecast across kind of western Montana, which is where that kind of strongest signal is, kind of almost aligning right down the border with Idaho.
Oh, okay.
So in that it seems like only an extra inch, but when you turn all of that into mountain snows where it's really cold, you can end up getting an extra couple of feet of snow out of that, especially if those storm systems come in at a time when it's also cold. So there's a bit of a timing that's real kind of key for that. But it does look like more precipitation and a colder pattern overall for Montana this winter.
I think I heard just a slight cheer from skiers as you were saying that. But,
yeah, more good fresh powder. Let's do it.
Yeah, that's right. So, with you kind of talked a little bit about how all this comes about as far as you're projecting it and all that. So from the information that you see and what we've just kind of talked about, so we're going to take a quick little break, but when we come back, maybe you can get into that prediction mode a little bit for us and kind of give us more of a formal prediction of what you think is going to be the rest of the winter from 24-25. And if possible, and I know I'm asking a lot here off the cuff here, but if possible, maybe you could kind of give us an idea of the different regions of Montana, maybe break it down a little just so we can get a feel for it. Because I'm also trying to find out when I get to go ice fishing here soon. So we'll take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll hear that from Matt right after this. Hey, I want to tell you a bit about one of the great businesses that is responsible for making this podcast possible. I'm talking about my friends at Superior Hardwoods of Montana. They're a well-established Montana company with origins starting way back to 1977. They've been proudly serving the Missoula community and, well, far beyond that since then. Yeah, so no matter where you're listening, they can help you. Now, again, if you have been listening to this podcast for a while, you know that some of the things Superior Hardwoods is most known for are their extraordinary flooring lines. In fact, a majority of those are manufactured right there in their lumber yard in Missoula. And speaking of flooring, they just introduced the Timeless Pre-Finish series. Now, this is a series designed to simplify the overwhelming task of remodeling and replacing the old worn-out flooring in your home. This new series allows you to effortlessly transform any room pretty much instantly. This flooring is made in America and comes in pre-finished maple, hickory, white oak, red oak, ash, and reclaimed oak. It's just beautiful. It has a superior quality sealer and matte finish to it. Now, this totals 6 coats of durable protection on the floor. But along with all their different flooring lines and their acres of reclaimed beams and lumber, they also offer fantastic products to complete your remodel. Thousands of feet of alder molding and hundreds of square feet of stunning antique paneling. Just beautiful stuff. That's going to make your home feel special to you and your family and friends every time they come see you. It's kind of amazing when you think about it, but when you work with the folks at Superior Hardwoods of Montana, you'll be able to create a look for your home that says who you really are to all who stop by. I guess what I'm trying to say is it completes your remodel project to the point that your house just doesn't have a new look or updated look to it. No, it becomes much more than that. Not just a house you live in, but it is now uniquely your home. And it'll feel that way, not just because the project is completed. No, it will feel that way every time you and your family and friends walk through the door. That, my friends, is the difference that Superior Hardwoods of Montana makes. Stop by their showroom in Missoula, Montana today if you can, or give them a call at 406-251-2272, or just visit their website. It's a great way to get to know them at superior-hardwoods.com. That's superior-hardwoods.com, and let them guide you through the woods. Back here on the Montana Outdoor Podcast, Matt Rosencrans is my guest. He is with the National Weather Service Climate Prediction Center, and we're talking about what the weather's going to look like here. And of course, again, they can't guarantee it, but by golly, he did really good when he was on with us last time. So let's see how he does here. So for the rest of, I guess it's not officially winter yet. So for winter 24-25, can you give us a more of a formal then forecast of what you see Montana doing? And if possible, can you kind of break it into regions?
Yeah. So when I look at the outlooks for December, January, February, which, that is meteorological winter. So
right.
We're kind of close enough that winter started.
Sure.
It's the 3 coldest months of the year. That's kind of how we define that.
Mm-hmm.
We are looking at below normal temperatures. That's what's favored for for all of the kind of northern plains. When you get to Montana, it's actually like this kind of sounds weird to say, but the further north you go, the colder it's going to get.
Yeah.
That seems kind of self-evident, but even within the state, right? Like our forecasts are for more strongly below normal temperatures further north in the state, the northern half of the state. And the line kind of runs almost west-east directly across the state.
Okay.
So further north. And then precipitation, when you're looking at that, it does look like the wettest part of the state is going to be in the high terrain, kind of paralleling that border with Idaho. That's your biggest, strongest signals for where you get more rain in low levels, but more snow in the upper levels, just more precipitation in general on the west. As you get out, that signal does really get quite weak as you get towards the border with North Dakota and South Dakota. And then South Dakota and North Dakota have just climatology chances. There's no big shift there. They don't have a wet signal there. So it really does ramp up kind of being low in the east, just kind of not too far from normal precip in the east to quite a bit far above normal precipitation in the western part of the state.
So looking at our state's largest body of water, Fort Peck Reservoir, which is 134 miles long, very large body of water. That's up in the northeast portion of Montana, near the Canadian border, near the town of Glasgow, Montana. So with these lower than normal temperatures, would I be safe to say that we might get some freezing temperatures enough to freeze some of those bays in that big reservoir and get out and do some ice fishing?
You're definitely gonna be well below normal,
Okay.
well below
Perfect.
freezing for the right, because it's not even below normal; it's below freezing. That's the real key. And then even colder,
Absolutely, yeah.
right, you want to get those days down. Single digits overnights and things like that to get that real thick ice.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, you'll definitely have a lot of days of that, and you're gonna have more days of that this year than you did last year.
Perfect.
So I do see it being colder, and that's just not me seeing it, right? That's
Right.
We have, when we look at the sea surface temperatures over the world, we do take all that pattern that's in there, all the data points that are in there, and say what years does that match, and we can use that for making a forecast. We'll take all those data points around the globe and the sea surface temperatures and run that through the computer models and see where that comes out. I literally go through, it's like 200 and something of them.
Wow.
And then we bring them all together. We can see which ones started with bad data, automatically throw those out, right?
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to start with bad. You want to start with the good data. Which ones are, and then some of them have known they get too warm. So we'll correct them downwards a little bit. And you assess that by looking over the past 30, 40, 50 years of those model runs. You can see what they did. And if they're too warm, to correct them down a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's how we come up with the forecast for below normal temperatures across Montana. I'm trying to look at the exact number too that I've got for that.
Yeah, it amazes me how, we think of ourselves, in our own little world here in Montana, but how much of our weather gets affected by stuff way, way far away from us.
Oh, yeah. So
it just blows me away.
Yeah, there's some of the research papers that, that when you go to school, you learn about this in the first part. For this, you learn about it in the first part. And it's, if you want to do a 7-day forecast, you need to know about every data point in the entire planet. At some point, it goes back and connects. So you truly are connected to everyone else on this planet. When you're just out there and it's raining, and you're that wind that made that rain was, out over, the Pacific Ocean just a couple of days ago. And that little wobble was caused by some thunderstorms out there.
Yeah. Amazing. So are you able to see like wind as far as, can you see that on a long-term forecast like we're talking about right now? Because that does affect ice on the different waterways. If we get a lot of wind, it's hard to get that water to calm down and get that good hard freeze. Are you seeing any wind across the state, usual than normal?
Not in the next couple of weeks. Really, wind forecast. That's something I've been researching here for the past couple of years. We haven't gotten to the point where we can do a wind forecast, beyond about 2 weeks. The models will do it. Our tools will do it, but it's not accurate enough. So we got to, put some scientists' brains here together and figure that out, how to make that accurate.
Yeah.
So we don't want to make it public because it's not accurate. We don't want to we don't want to cry wolf onto that stuff. So but no, next 2 weeks don't look too windy. They look just like, you're going to have, if a storm system goes by, 15, 20 miles an hour, stuff like that. But I'm not seeing any big, 40, 50 mile an hour wind events. None of that come in the next 2 weeks. But after that, there's really no signal there.
Okay. Now, are you able to get like actual temperature predictions for different parts of the state? Can you see what you might think there for say the next 2 or 3 months?
Yeah. So we have climate divisions. We break down the state. There's kind of an eastern Montana, north central, kind of south central, kind of Bozeman on up. Yeah. And then kind of one that goes along the higher terrain out to the west. Higher terrain out to the west looks like to be about half degree below normal for December, January, February, which doesn't sound like a lot, but a half degree, average that out over 90 days. That's a half times 90. So you're getting 45 degrees total below normal. So that's that's a pretty strong signal.
Whoa, yeah.
And then the signal actually gets stronger as you go to the east. Our strongest signal is on the border with North and South Dakota, where those climate divisions are forecast to be 1.25 degrees below normal, which really means you have a lot of days in the next 3 months that are likely to be below normal. And our normal for those is only 17 degrees Fahrenheit. So most of those days are going to be solidly below freezing and down into the single digits, if not the below zeros, for a lot of that time.
Now you're talking. Yeah. That's ice fishermen love that. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, our normal, right, and that's on the border of North Dakota. So I see those normals, that 15-degree normal line kind of cuts right through there. So yeah, it is looking like a colder than normal season out there. We had 2017, 2016. Those are some of our colder years in the last 10, and we're seeing those even 2018, right? And some of those were good La Nina years, and we're going to likely be in a La Nina winter this winter. So that's kind of right. That's what I talk about when you look at past years to make this outlook.
Okay. So that's good news. Well, I'm liking what we're hearing there, and I know our ice fishermen out there are gonna, excuse me, are gonna love that. Now, as far as looking even further, and we're going to take one more. We're going to take one more quick break, and then we'll put you on the spot even a little bit more in looking at next spring and summer, if possible. Now, if you can't, you can. I get it. But let's talk about that when we come back right after this. My friends at Rocky Mountain Truck and Trailer are proud authorized dealers of some of the most highly revered brands in the world, like CM Truck Beds, Diamond C Trailers, and of course, Boss Snowplows. Now, I know some of you may not want to think about this right now, but sorry, we have to face the fact that before we know it, fall will be over and winter will be with us for a long time. Now, last winter, we got off a little easier than in the past years, but this year it will likely be much different. Now, why do I say that? A while back, I did a podcast with Matthew Rosencrans in the National Weather Service Climate Prediction Center. He said that his long-term prediction models show that Montana and other areas in the Northwest are in for more precipitation this winter. Could be lots more. Of course, that means snow, and that means driveways, parking lots, and roads will need to be plowed. And of course, that means you'll want a Boss snowplow to get the job done quickly and perfectly every time it snows. And that, my friends, can only mean one thing. You need to talk to Rocky Mountain Truck and Trailer right now about a Boss snowplow for your truck, tractor, ATV, or UTV, or whatever you're going to put it on. You need to do this now before they run out of them. You'll be prepared for what is coming because not only will you have the best snowplow in the world that is perfectly designed for what you want to put it on, but the folks at Rocky Mountain Truck and Trailer will install it for you so it works the first time and every time. Now, this is the time, my friends, to be ready this winter with the best. A Boss snowplow from Rocky Mountain Truck and Trailer. Now, if you're in the area, you can just stop by at 5680 Expressway in Missoula, Montana, or you can just go see them at rmtte.com. rmtte.com. Take a look at all the Boss snowplows they have right now, as well as the other equipment like CM truck beds and Diamond C trailers that will also make your life so much easier this winter. Yeah, there's no better place to get ready for winter than Rocky Mountain Truck and Trailer. Go see them now at rmtte.com. That's rmtte.com. Matt Rosencrans is my guest. He is with the National Weather Service Climate Prediction Center. And Matt has been kind enough to spend some time with us and give us a bit of an idea of what our winter looks like. And now I'm going to push the envelope a little further and just really annoy the heck out of it. What does the spring and summer look like for 2025? Do you have any ideas there?
Yeah, so we do outlooks, not just for the next 3 months, but we do each kind of 3-month period all the way out through the next year. So I can go look at like March, April, May, for example.
Yeah.
And while the ice fishermen were possibly happy during the winter with the below normal temperatures, they're likely to extend. March, April, May has below normal temperatures forecast again. It is a receding signal, and you do start to work out of it. So you start to work to back in the spring. Probably by May, you're starting to get to temperatures near normal for May. Okay. Right, but March still looks to hold on to some of that cold signal for the winter, and colder than normal is kind of the key. So that's what we're looking at for March, April, May. There's no real strong signal for precipitation then. So, what your normal March, April, May is, that's your best kind of information to use for this March, April, May. And that's usually because, so we're going to La Nina this winter. La Ninas and El Ninos, they tend to transition out in the spring. So you don't really have any big thing kind of shift in the climate one way or the other. You'll get your normal progression of storms. And then when you average it all out, it averages out to about normal conditions.
Okay. Okay. And then as we get deeper into the summer, what does it look like?
Kind of a bit of wash, rinse, and repeat of last year, warm and dry.
Okay.
That's longer term trends for a lot of the Western U.S. Actually, a lot of the U.S. just has a slight trend towards the warmer, but that's strongest in the kind of Southwest U.S. and then up to as the Rockies. As you go northward toward Montana, you maintain some of that signal. So down towards Yellowstone, that's going to be likely the warmest area, kind of the southwest part of the state. And then as you go northeast, they're likely to be a little bit more towards near normal for the summer. But everywhere in the west is looking kind of dry.
Okay. Well, sorry, farmers. We tried.
I know. Well, hopefully they get through the winter, get the get the good wet ground, keep some of the reservoirs so you can irrigate and get through the tower. Like that's kind of like the way you can get through out west is those good wet winters and really harvesting that. Can you harvest water?
Yeah, well, and that actually that's kind of what we do. I mean that back in the New Deal when FDR got the New Deal and started doing all these projects around, that's where a lot of the big dams and reservoirs were put into Montana. And so that was the whole idea behind it, was so that the farmers and everybody could get a little more consistency. So if you have a dry year, you've got a big reservoir full of water, and you can continue to irrigate and stuff. So yeah, we'll just have to bank that and do the best we can. But as far as going through this winter, then just so I make sure I'm understanding it, then we're going to see maybe a little more precipitation than normal?
Oh, yeah.
Think?
Yeah. No, our forecast for December, good. January, February, even January, February, March does have wetter than normal conditions. Okay. And and with that colder than normal conditions, you could end up with quite a bit more snowpack up in the terrain that can flow down eventually to those lakes once you get to the melting season.
And that's huge for everywhere in Montana. If we can't have it right on demand, then by golly, let's fill the reservoirs and get that going. And so that's welcome news there. So what would you say is like one of the harder things to predict? You mentioned wind. Is wind probably the hardest thing for you guys to try to get your arms around it as far as predicting it?
As far as the kind of traditional things that we look at, right, or like that you feel when you go outside, right? You either feel it's hot or cold, you feel it's wet or dry if it's raining or not, and you feel if it's windy, right? Those are kind of big things. Wind and snow are kind of the two things that we're really looking to, that forecast and really do the research behind to make sure we can really do them and get them to the same accuracy level we can do with temperature and precipitation. So we'd really like to be able to do that, right? So because think about snowfall, it's precipitation plus temperature. So now you got to get both of them right to get the snowfall right. So it's doubly as hard. Wind is really local. You can get wind in gaps in mountains that you don't get just like 2 miles up the road, even though they're basically the same temperature, those two areas. So we got to really make sure that we do it right and get the data to make sure that. So wind is definitely more difficult for now. And then, we're also looking at extremes. It's going to be warmer than normal this summer, but how many of those days might hit 90 degrees? If you're in the Southwest, how many days hit 100, 110, depending on where you are, right? Like, I know when I was in Bozeman, I don't think everywhere didn't have air conditioning at some point. So those days where it hits 85, 90, that's a big deal, and it makes life a lot more difficult.
It definitely does, especially for us Montanans when we're not used to a lot of really warm weather. So, traditionally, we have seen. In fact, I just did a podcast with Garrett Osler, who is a fishing guide down in West Yellowstone, and he was already ice fishing. West Yellowstone, Montana, often will be the coldest place in the nation. I've seen that many, many times as far as the lower 48 goes. Yep. And he had mentioned, he said the longest ice fishing year he had was the first day he actually got on the ice was Halloween. He did not get off the ice until like mid-May. and that was
Wow.
quite a few years ago. But that was
Wow.
his last one. And he said mid-May he was probably being stupid. He was on some pretty thin ice, but he did fish and caught fish through the ice. So what do you think for a place like West Yellowstone that has that traditionally just cold area? Are we going to see West Yellowstone really get cold this year, do you think, with these above or below normal temperatures and above average precipitation?
I mean, I think they'll definitely get the periods where they get really, really cold this year. There are some trends towards warmer temperatures. So do you get as cold as you get in, 1981, even 1991? You're less likely to see those. But this would be one of the years where you're likely to see some of those really intense colder periods. Maybe not test a low, like a record low, but get pretty close to it, a couple more times this year. So hopefully he's not on too much thin ice.
Yeah.
Unless that's with another human, right?
Yeah, you got to be careful. But
yeah, but I don't think it's do we last until May? Probably not this year though.
Yeah.
So, but definitely good in the heart of the winter. You'll be cold enough for that.
Well, it sounds like we're in for kind of what we've all been wishing for there. Maybe not getting quite as much in the summer, but so far so good. Now, another question I wanted to ask you, and this just came to me. I had on the radio here last Saturday. I promoted that I was going to have you on the podcast, and sure enough, I get an email this morning, and somebody asked. And I get this question a lot, and I'm sure you get it a bunch too, but is the whole climate change thing real? And, we see this debated. We hear it debated a lot. From your standpoint, I mean, is it real? And is man affecting the world's temperature, do you think? Or what are your thoughts?
From all the data analysis I've seen, yes, man is when you run these models that we have, when you look at the data analysis, you can take the temperature data record and go back thousands of years using tree data or snowpack data. And then you can figure out, okay, well, those thousands of years, we weren't doing what we're doing now. And then you can say, okay, well, we started doing what we've been doing since about the 1880s. What does it change? Okay, well, can you back out the signal for changes in the Earth's orbit? You can back out the changes for changes in sea surface temperature pattern changes. And then there's only like one thing left, and that causes the temperatures to go up. So the signal is there from the impacts of human activity into the climate. Is it universally warm everywhere in all the same ways? No. It makes warm temperatures more likely. Cold temperatures are still going to happen. It just makes them less likely to happen. We always set more high temperature records every year than we do low temperature records. You get a little bit more rain. The rain snow line, it's just a little higher on the mountains. That's kind of some of the impacts that you see there. But you can end up with longer growing seasons too. In some cases, right? Less time you've got to worry. More days between when you're worried about that hard freeze on your crops, things like that. So it's the impacts are very, very local and very different.
So it's not the end of times yet. We probably got a while to go before we head to the hills and find a good cave to live in.
For Montana, yeah. Yeah, it is definitely not that time. Although you guys do have some beautiful mountains out there where you might find some good caves to go hide.
Oh yeah, there's some great ones. In fact, there's a big one that everybody tours, which is the Lewis and Clark Caverns. In fact, they do their annual Christmas deal where they tour you through the caverns via candlelight. So it kind of gives you the feeling of what the early explorers and how they looked at that massive, massive cave and all the different things. Kind of a neat thing to go do. And And in fact, they're selling their reservations right now for that if people want to go see it.
I may have to book one up myself for that. That sounds fantastic.
It really is a very special thing, and they only do all told about 6 days in December that they'll do that. But if you've never done it, it is pretty amazing. I've done it once, and
I may have to wait. It's only a couple days in December, but that sounds. Yeah. I mean, plus Lewis and Clark. I mean, the expedition, and then just finding their way across the western U.S. I mean,
yeah. That was Montana's very first state park. Oddly enough, it kind of got that name, though. Lewis and Clark never saw the inside of those caverns. They camped there. They just didn't know they were there, but they were found later, of course, after the core discovery. But that's an amazing place. So yeah, if the climate change thing ever gets to that gloom and doom, a lot of people might be heading there. But I think we're all going to be long gone before that happens, I imagine.
Probably.
So all in all, looks like we're tracking where we want to be. As far as looking, is there a part of the United States that's harder to predict than other parts, do you think?
In some ways, you look at like kind of the northern plains, North Dakota, and then you stretch the central plains down towards like St. Louis.
Mm-hmm.
That area has the most variability in their temperature and the precipitation and the winds pattern there. So the most variability compared to the average conditions. So that makes it hard to predict that way. There's just much more change than there is kind of the middle part of the what we're trying to forecast. And then the western U.S., right? So you get to the Northern Rockies, that can be difficult in that if your El Nino or your La Nina pattern sets up just slightly different than your historical models, it'll move that precipitation maximum, to the west side out towards Spokane, or it'll move it to the east side out towards Glasgow. And while you talk about the forecast for Montana being wet, you move it just a little bit, and then half your forecast is wrong in one shot by moving it, and you're kind of like, oh man, I had the right idea, it just wasn't in the exact right spot. And it's real sensitive too. Like that, temperatures in the Pacific can move by 100 miles. It changes, where you are in Montana with the rain. So, it can be difficult. So some of the better signals though are, the Pacific Northwest during La Nina being wet, or the Southeast during El Nino being wet. Great Lakes have a really good signal, both trend, El Nino, and some of the other soil moisture things in the summer. So there's some places are easier, and then those places are more difficult too. Like plains.
Yeah, and with Montana, of course, as I said, we're always trying to track the weather and understand it. And I do the weather forecasts during our live show every Saturday morning. And so I get it all the time where I get emails and all that. Well, way to go, Rigger. You were wrong again and all that. I'm just reading the information you guys are putting out. How much of that do you get, especially being in the prediction center? Do you get a lot of people always giving you crap about that and saying, way to go, Matt, you didn't get it right?
And every time I don't get it right, I just say that's something for the scientists to learn. But yeah,
there you go.
Right. Just I do, right, and we own it when we get it wrong, and we will do an analysis and put it out there. And so, okay, we got it right this time. We got it wrong these number of times. It's all on our website. We try and be very upfront about it. I wish I got it right every time. I really do.
Well, we would all love that, but it's maybe one day, as technology gets better and that. But anyway, folks, for those of you who listen to the show and I get that wrong, that's Matt, not me. It's Matt that's messing that up. All right,
every
brother.
time I mess you up, I'll just have to send you a 6-pack of like Spanish Peaks Brewery or something like that.
There you go. Do something like that, and all will be forgiven. Well, I want to thank you very much for again spending time with us, and I hope you'll agree to come back again because we really do enjoy this, and more seriously, we really do depend on you guys, because I think Montana is one of those states where the way the weather goes really affects just not only our lives, but it affects our economy and so much of the other things. And so it's something we really try to watch closely. And what you guys do certainly is important to us. So thank you for your service in the military, and thank you very much for what you're doing today.
Yeah, thanks for having me here, Del. And I do hope people kind of take the information that we have. They can prepare. They can be a little safe in the winter. They can get out and explore in the winter, but have the right gear and do it right and stay safe.
Yep. That's what we try to do and try to tell everybody all the time is, number one, you gotta take all the tools that are available to you with you, but more importantly, you gotta let people know when you're going and where you're going. Because
so important, right? Just let someone know where you're going, right? And when you think you're gonna be back. Right. And if you're not, that way they can get someone out to help you and find you if you get in a bad situation.
That is our biggest complaint, especially for our search and rescue folks who are so vital in this state, that they say all the time, it would have made life a lot easier had they just let somebody know.
So little known fact, guys across the hall from me in my office building here, they run the SARSAT.
Oh, really?
Yep. That's up on a NOAA satellite. So all the times that someone has to use it, which, in those bad situations, they're on call here 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for that. So
it's a heavy responsibility.
I hope no one finds himself in the situation. But if they need it, my wonderful colleagues, their office is actually over that way and upstairs. They're there every day of the week should you need them.
Well, I'll try to put some links to different things in the podcast description, folks, so you can kind of get an idea of where Matt is and what they're doing, and so we'll get the National Weather Service links and all that for you. And of course, we always have them on our website, montanooutdoor.com. So again, Matt, thanks so much for all your time and spending time with us, and keep those predictions coming.
Good talking to you, Dale.
All right, see ya. That is Matt Rosencrans. He's with the National Weather Service. He's in the Climate Prediction Center. Again, go down to the podcast links, and I'll have some links there that you can get to. And, of course, as always, the MontanaOutdoor.com is always there for you, and that can get you pretty much to anywhere you're wanting to find the latest weather. It's there, and that'll get you linked to it. And be safe, be good to each other, and we'll see you next time here on the Montana Outdoor Podcast.
Thanks for listening to the Montana Outdoor Podcast. It has been brought to you in part by Superior Hardwoods of Montana, home of the largest selection of in-stock high-end wood products and flooring in the western United States. Let them guide you through the woods at superior-hardwoods.com. And by Rocky Mountain Truck and Trailer in Missoula, home of Boss Snowplows, CM Truck Beds, and Diamond Sea Trailers. Just go to rmtte.com for more information. So what did you think of today's podcast? Send your questions and comments to Downrigger at montanooutdoor.com. We should be dropping a new podcast this next Saturday. Until then, we will see you soon out in Montana's great outdoors.